Testing, testing. Welcome again. I'm into the second part of this workshop that is a Grasshopper 101 Rhino viewport setup into loading Grasshopper canvas, which we've gotten to. I'll just repeat that, and we'll call this part B. We'll see how many parts it takes to get through 2 hours of video tutorials. This is a video guide for Grasshopper for Rhino, a 2-hour lab I'll be doing in October a couple times in the David T. Beals studios at the Kansas City Art Institute. My name is Michael Wickerson, and I am a practicing digital computational designer following about 30 years of analog sculpture building and professing and teaching in sculpture. What I've done is the last 15 minutes, we obviously went over setting up your Rhino window to the best of your ability, and I showed how to do some preferences and have some fun with that. I think it's shaded, it's a little more blue and soft on the eye with a gradient. So I'm going to set it up back to perspective, and what I'm going to do is type in Grasshopper. Now I actually have in Windows this little tool here that will launch Grasshopper, but if you just type Grasshopper, your screen comes up. And this is what we're going to talk about today, and we'll produce a few geometries as we go, but I'm going to teach this my way, and it's a bit of a hybrid mash of learning from individuals like Daniel Kristev, learning online from Jeremy Graham, being interested in Carl Singline, certainly Lon Newing lately, and a whole variety of things have happened in my life that I've made a multitude of series. And even though I've been through this series before, maybe 3 months ago, I think I'm a little clearer and a little more focused on what I'm doing. And let's start with something that's reasonable. Jump in here, and although this setup, we talked a little bit about was here, the canvas past project and starting a new one, and I'll just start a new one, and I actually have a template that pops in my first useless development component, so I'm just going to get rid of that. But we have a canvas here, and what's wonderful is somebody sends you, and I just want to show you this, if somebody sends you a Grasshopper file, I think this is just amazing. So we jump in here, the desktop, we'll go into see Grasshopper, we'll go into here and we'll grab, say, this Grasshopper logo here. So what I'm going to do is just shrink that. What's nice is you can take any file from here. As long as you have the same version, you can go in here and you can pop it in on all these different methods of bringing a file in here. So this one will actually, it's not saying, but this one will insert files. This one will actually group files. And why I like doing that is as I drop it onto the canvas, it drops it into a nice colorful group, and you can see exactly what's being dealt with here. And so I have this little project that's been built using de Castillo's algorithm, and that's actually applying in a C script a little bit of not Visual Script, but actually scripting in the C script system. Don't let this intimidate you. Just let you know how complex things can get, and they can get a lot more complex than this. But we're basically going to get into building node systems that are about 12 nodes in the process. And I may touch on Python nodes and the math nodes and C# programming, but chances are we're not going to do that during this workshop. I did want to show you that kind of fun and playfully you can go into here and play with very visualized graph mappers and gain a lot of control over your geometries in the Rhino viewport. First thing I want you to notice is that, yes, this is a canvas, and you can bring in things like notes and snipping planes. You can bring in number sliders and ranges. My main focus will be on params, but learning how to use the panel tool and learning how to use the param viewer to understand data. So when we go into here and grab anything, we can slide that out and see exactly what's going on there. And there's a list of numbers being generated, and we can plug the same slider in to see it as a param viewer to what we're dealing with. And you're going to see here we have 2 paths, A and B, and we have 11 items at the end of each branch. What's nice about that is if I hit a Control Paste, you can take a look at that as a tree item, and you're seeing that it's one branch with 2 paths. There's path A, there's path B, and you've got all your items at the end of it. So a really cool and interesting process. That's what we're going to focus on as I build simple scripts. Now, what am I going to use? I'm not going to use anything after this D. So I am going to, like I said in the last video, deal with params, maths, sets, vectors, curves to start, and then we'll go into surfaces, meshes, intersections, transformations, and display. I'll periodically pull from those things to keep things interesting over here, but what do you notice? I can't grab anything in Rhino. Nothing is real here. This is all what I refer to as ghosted. And whether I send that to all my views, and like I said, use our zoom extends all, and this nice little tool of slamming a window this off to the side, you're able to frame a smaller frame and shrink your toolbars on the side, your tools on the side of your settings of what you want to bring in. But right now, we've got a pretty cool system that I can run and change the radius of things, and radius actually has an effect on the actual tolerance of distance. So this actually runs the script and changes. But this is a little more complex than I want to get into. But what I want to show you is on the final node, as you read left to right, just like taking an object of clay and putting it into the kiln and baking it and firing it. Right click on that. You can group them if you want. You can put them in any layer you want because you've learned about layers in Rhino, hopefully. And you hit yes, and there you go. We can leave the ghosted form. We're going to go up here all the time and use this on and off as only draw preview geometry for selected objects. And if I click that, we're not looking at Grasshopper unless I want to click on the node. And I think of these node systems as building a train set. And as long as the tracks connect and everything works, so we don't have any nodes that are popping up orange or red, then that script will run. It's actually a functioning node-based script that you don't have to be a programmer really to get into and start to understand. The power of it is this iteration is now solid. It wasn't grouped, so I can actually grab the parts and pieces of this, and I can actually manipulate and do the things that I'm accustomed to in Rhino, like scaling and changing things uniform or non-uniform, and having an effect on that. But the ghosted image remains where it was in my script, and to change that, I've got to go in and ghost another shape. And as soon as I ghost another shape like that, I could take the ones that I just produced, lift them off as a iteration 1, let's call it. And what I'm going to do is go to full perspective. And in doing so, then I have another iteration I've played with and changed, and I can go back in and bake another iteration. So constantly, this script allows me to see multiple forms of what I'm doing. And once again, that's really the power of it. It's a recorded history that even then, when I'm done, and I forgot this one piece, I'll just delete it. As I get rid of the Rhino objects, that's why I use visibility so often to hide things I like, get rid of them for a second. Excuse me. We can go back in and deal with these ghosted forms as a script, and we can start to understand what's happening. And here's a little playful thing, change from rounded caps over to flat caps. As simple as changing the data, and you see we get a different kind of structure of these cylinders coming together. One that's reacted well by joining over here, and one that stayed as loose pipes. And I think this is very interesting how the script runs, which shows you how pipes can be used to generate it loosely, but actually the pipes and cuts that you actually put it into the welds to figure out how this works. And we'll break it down and analyze this maybe in a future script, but I'm going to be building scripts from scratch. What's nice about it is we're going to talk about a little bit of the interface and what you can do here. I'm going to delete that and start again with a blank canvas. I'm going to start from the most simple Grasshopper tools I think you're going to want to end up learning. First and foremost, anything in the param menu, as you extend it out, that's surrounded by a hexagon is a container. It is not a component. It does nothing but contain and hold things. So if I was to grab a point container, it's asking for a point and desiring something from Rhino. If I grab I'll grab the most standard things, the point, the curve, and we'll grab a surface, and that should be enough to start. One tool that really helps is to download this plugin, which I will show you how to download plugins later in the course. But right now, since you don't have it, what are our options to see what these things actually are? So go to the param view and grab yourself a few containers, whatever you feel like. But please be aware of the plankton mesh. I'm only now wrapping my head around it and the complexities of thinking of triangles and meshes and thinking of the lines on them and going in two directions to learn how to use what Lon Newing uses so well in C# programming. So avoid that one and pull out whatever other one you kind of want. And if you want to go into the primitives only here and start grabbing things like booleans and numbers and integers, complex numbers I would avoid for now, matrices you might want to avoid as well. And it gets more and more complex as we get into KUKA robotics. But stay to the initial one for this intro class. Grab a few of these, pull them in, I don't care if it's a box or whatever. And one tool I do want you to grab for sure is just kind of this generic geometry that will grab hold of anything. And in doing so, you see these are all orange. So that's where we're going to begin. And we're at 9 minutes in, and we're getting through the first section of this. And this whole class is going to be based on going through each one of these and pulling the most useful things out of it. And you'll see I jump ahead and back. But params are parameters and what we would use. So for the next few minutes, let's have a little play. Now, what you do when you right-click on one of these, it says all these wonderful things. How do I preview it? How do I enable it? How do I bake it into Rhino? How do I see it? How do I graft and flatten it, which gets into data structures, and we'll talk about that. How do I set one point, and how do I set multiple points? And that's where we're going to begin. We're going to go into Rhino and do something that you're probably pretty accustomed to by the end of this course, and I'm just putting in points. And as soon as I put in 4 points, I can select them all, go over here, right-click, and say Set Multiple Points. And what you notice is this goes from orange into gray, which means it's running, it's working. And the thing I want to do now, after I load in a few of these, is take a look at these objects which are actually movable And as they're movable, these ghosted forms in Grasshopper, these green dots, which aren't there, the other dots are, we can hide them now. And those points can either be right-clicking internalized into the data, and they're in there. So now when I go back and I show them, and I didn't mean to do all of those other things. Let me get rid of those. And actually, I should just delete them. But in here are the points. If I move them now, these have been internalized, and these points are not having an effect on this. In fact, if I wanted these points to have an effect on these points, I would have to go back and set multiple points to those. And now it's saying, what for are those? And it's having difficulty because it's reading something that's already in there. And now it's saying, no, you've got to go in and build your new point system, and we'll be willing to accept those. So once again, those first 4 points are kind of useless at this point, but we set future points in here to move around. But it is internalized, and they're in there. And I could extract the parameter at any time. You get those points back. At least I should. Here they are. And then I should be able to move them independently as a gumball and pull them around and do different things with them. But what's happening as I move those devices and tools, for some reason my little plane tool isn't working, those are updating in the Grasshopper window. So when I select them all, and I put hide on there, you see they've updated, and I have selected those items and hit enter. I can go back into where they are, and these are the ghosted parameters of what's there. And this brings me to the first stage of what I want to do using the panel tool to see exactly what's there as data. And what you'll see is we have float numbers indicating the x, y, z coordinates, one of which is still on the base plane, so z is 0, actually 2 are 0, and you have these points being described here, and the param tool will always come in and tell you exactly what you have, one branch with 4 items. And that looks like a tree, one branch with 4 items. Pretty simple enough. And we can do the same thing with those geometries. We can lose these because they're not important right now. These are the ones that are actually internalized into that node. And I can play with them, change them, and in changing them, they will update. And that's the recorded history that you're getting as you're playing with things. You can definitely break this point into something more interesting, which we will get to when we get into vectors and creating points. It's a totally other way of creating a point, but instead of setting it from Rhino, you can actually set the data in to actually be the point. And we'll get ahead to that in a minute. But what I want you to do is just practice for the first few minutes, 5 minutes, and have some fun in going back into your Rhino window, generating hard geometry, like a curve, a NURBS curve for points, or control points. Select that, and if it's only one item, right-click and set that to curve and make that work. And as soon as that works, I want you to go in, and you don't have to view the tree. You can just double-click, or you can right-click and choose Draw a Tree, or you can right-click and choose Draw Clay again to go back to the data. And this is one path, and this is very interesting what's happening here, because I have one branch with 4 items, and I can show you a simple tool that will make it 4 branches with 1 item on each. Think of a tree trunk with branches and fruit at the ends of it. And I'll cover this in detail. This one, what I want to do is just select this, cut, and edit, and we won't need such a big, long, nasty thing because it's one curve, so it's a reference one planar curve. Click off, and then you can actually go in and connect. What I'm doing is collecting wires, and while you're doing this, have a look. I have my display set to draw icons. I can click that, and it will tell me exactly what the word is. But the technique I'd like you to learn is to go in and have draw items and start to customize yourself to these kind of images of what they mean. You can always hover over them, and they'll tell you exactly what it is. And if you can't remember, you can always go into a node, hit group, and then you can right-click on the group, and you can actually title it things like point. And this is basically what the bifocal tool does. So now you have a point that you know is a point. You're reading the icon, inputs on the left, outputs on the right. So that's a nice thing to practice. So if you want to start cleaning your code up from the start, go in and group. And of course, you can go in here in color and make things as fancy pants as you want. Right-click on here and type in curve or my curve. And you're starting the program, and you're thinking about that. I have got a surface. I've got other things. But I also want you to realize that this surface updated with these branches will update from that original curve, which I can put into hiding. And now, actually, I didn't want to put it in hiding. I want to be able to grab the control points, and you'll realize that I can update that curve and have really nice control over what's happening in that. So anything I do from this curve in manipulating a curve later on, I can change back in my original and get to it. Now, I once again would not build a curve this way. I would build it not just from points this way, but I would go back to what I just had shown. I would build points from a system of x, y, z coordinates, and then I would use the curve tools like interpolate or nerve curves to end up producing a curve like this. And right now it's saying, no, that's not working because I have one vertice. So how can I draw a curve between one point? So what you'd have to end up doing, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, is do a little move, and it takes the point and it moves it in a direction. So if we zoom in, you'll see you have this point and this point. And if we put both those vertices in, hold down shift, it will take both and it will draw a line between them. So you basically built a line. You're like, Mike, I don't want to sit here and learn how to make points and lines. I'm telling you right now, if you want to work solids, you want to work surfaces, you want to work lines, you want to work points, and if you're going to learn from me, you're going to take a point and break it into its attributes, X, Y, Z, and then you're going to play with the maths, the big ranges, and get total and utter mathematical control and see the beauty of the universe through Grasshopper for Rhino, through simple programming that's going to be dependent upon mathematics. I'm interested in the one dealing in algorithmic algorithms and definitely logic when it comes to what's actually happening here. So I got really complex with some further nodes, but right now you've got to stay to the basics of the containers. So a surface, once again, if you're good at it, grab yourself a surface like this. And actually, that's not even a surface yet. That's just a curve outline. I could do it in Grasshopper, and I could do it, but as you get better at this, let's just grab a little box surface like this. As long as we're in shaded, we'll see it. What's nice is we can throw it into rebuild, which hopefully you learned in your Rhino classes. And I'm just going to have my control points. And when I look at these control points and put them on, hopefully you've had a hand at this, you could start to manipulate these control points and start to place some surface edits on here. And what's nice is this tool, if I go in and right click and set one plane, there we go. I can grab all this geometry, put it to my hidden tool or to a layer, and now I have pretty cool parametric control on that surface. Once again, load in a surface, realize you have control of the work in Rhino, and some of you will dance back and forth. What you're seeing here in displays is drawing icons or not drawing icons, and I would encourage you to group and label what you're doing. So go into here, you click this and just click outside a little bit, hit group, click in the purple area, and type in surface or my surface, and there you go. You've got another name that tells you exactly what this is. You don't really need to know this is a panel because it's a panel and you'll memorize that. And panels are this yellow squiggle tool here that tells you stuff. And the tree param viewer is the other one we're going to look at. Obviously, we're trying to get through this first section of params and seeing what's useful in here. The other thing that's absolutely useful, and we will get there, is the number slider, and that deserves its own time just to look at it. We're at 17 minutes, and all I want to do is just continue with box structure. Go in here. I want to take the whole thing and expose all of these things: surface, curve, box. But with the box, I want to pop it in here, set one box. And it's saying, oh, now sometimes you have to build a line in the boxes, which is interesting, and I have my snaps on, so I don't need this initial one. And it's interesting that some nodes work one way and some nodes work the other, but you can see I have a ghosted box that's here, and what we have is a tool that we can now start exploding and taking apart and decomposing it. I think the tool is actually deconstruct brep, which will get this down to its vertices, its edges, and its surfaces, and we can gain control over that. But once again, you have one item, one thing. Notice this: one item with one item, one branch with one item, one branch with one item has these dark lines. These are double lines. If you're not seeing this, you need to go to display and click draw fancy wires. If you're not, it all comes up basic wires, but it's essential that you start drawing fancy wires and know that these points are either single items, list of items, or data trees of items, like a tree of items, which is many branches coming off of it. Why I did this was now I can grab all my geometries, this one not being baked because it's just ghosted and created in a Grasshopper. I did not mean to do that. What I meant to do was right click and hit bake and bake that to a level. And here we have all these items, points, and I may have to go up to the points and just do a little extraction and jump on here and see these points. I grab all these geometries, point, line, surface, solid, and put them as all multiple geometries into that geometry. And that's the power of that tool. So go into here, grab yourself your panel and your data tree and start analyzing what you have. Obviously, it's a list of items. What are the lists? One branch with 3 items. And what did we end up getting? We ended up getting one curve, one brep, and one branch. And I want to show you one thing, that if I go in here and I take this data and do what's called as a set tool, and you're going to be, this is getting too complex for me, I'm going to graft it, which basically means take every item and give it its own branch. And I want you to see, as I take this data again, panel and data tree, and this is essential for knowing and following Grasshoppers, at least the way I want to see it. If I pull that out, something has changed, and you're going to see exactly how the paths have changed. Not only has the tree the data changed here from looking like one branch with 3 items. I have indicated by these darker panels a single branch with a single item, a single branch, a second branch with a single item, a third branch with a single item, all indices 0, 0, 0, whereas the indices here were a list of 0, 1, 2. That's going to become more and more important as you go and how to follow the data path to see where it is. The other thing you can notice difference is I have one branch with 3 items. Now I have 3 branches with 1 item on each. The tree you're seeing here is a branch with 1 item on each, all the items at the end of one branch. This one, when I draw a tree, you'll see 3 branches with 1 item on each. Because the indices and numbers at the end, it doesn't matter if it has 100 items here or 1 item, it's going to come up as that red dot unless I actually end up grafting that information. So we're going to go hard into understanding params, maths, sets, and vectors all the way to curve to start. And that's how I'm thinking. But get into the habit of this. Let's start reading our data and thinking this way. If you're bored and uninterested, don't leave quite yet. It will get exciting as we go farther into this. Thank you very much for watching. And I will continue, just so you stay on board, with our params. We're going to go into primitives, have a look at containing different data besides these geometries, which are interesting here, that we can play with domains and we can play with color and numbers. We'll stay to the very basic ones to start. Boolean is very essential for programming if you have a sense of true and false, 1 and 0, yes or no, choose choice or not choice. That's going to come in handy. And then the inputs are very playful right across here all the way down. We're going to have a little bit of fun in this. And I'm also going to show you the power of working in a few tools here. Not everything, because it's a very short course, and we've already spent a half an hour of it just going over the intro, the interface, and getting you playing in Grasshopper. So take a few minutes to play with that, and I'll come around the room and see what's going on. Thank you for watching.